I'm not even surprised anymore that learning a Tosfos in Zevachim on the first day of Chol Hamoed Sukkot deals with lulav. It doesn't even surprise me anymore. We're talking about the difference between acting on something and truly connecting with something. And that when you act on something, the energy flow is one way. It's from the actor to that is being acted upon. When you connect with something, the energy is bilateral. Touch, xatzitza, בכלי sharet ובלולב, Zevachim Daf Daled Amud Aleph. We're dealing with a Gemara that talks about lo yehe davar chotzets beino leben kli sharet, that there should not be a xatzitza, anything that interrupts the contact between the kli sharet, the utensil being used in the temple, and the hands of the Kohen, and the same applies with the floor of the Beis HaMikdash, which has the same din. Rashi says, why not? Because we have a posuk that says, in the case of Kabbalas Adam, when you receive the blood in a utensil, v'lakach ha-kohen, the kohen shall take. It doesn't say he shall take, it doesn't say v'lakach, it says v'lakach ha-kohen, teaching us, shetehei lekicha be'atzmo shel kohen, that the being of the kohen has to do the lekicha, the taking. It has to be taken by him, the kohen himself, by his body. There's got to be touch, there's got to be contact. Asks Tosfos, so we see that if there isn't direct contact between the hand of the Kohen and the kli, the utensil that he's holding, that's considered a chatzitza, and therefore lekicha al yedei davar acher lo shma lekicha. If you're holding it by means of something else, the Kohen's hand is in a glove, or he's holding some cloth in between his hand and the kli itself, such a case is not shmei lekicha. Why then does Rova, and we paskin that way, say in Masechta Sukkah, Lamed Zayin on Masechta Sukkah, de lekicha al yedei davar acher shma lekicha? There he says clearly that to hold it by means of something else is considered lekicha. Let's have a look at the Gemara in Sukkah. The Gemara in Sukkah says, Amalahu Rabbo lahanu megadle hoshana debei reish geluso. The people who used to put together the arba minim for the house of the reish geluso, the head of the community, Rabbo says to them, Ki gadlitu hoshana debei reish geluso shayri bei beit yad. When you bind the lulav and esra, bind the lulav, the arba minim, or 3 of the 4 minim, for the reish geluso, make sure to leave the bottom part without binding. Not like we do it. We've got little baskets and tabs and things. Although we do it b'mina, we do it specifically out of lulav leaves, out of palm leaves, and that's the reason we do that. But he warns them not to have anything there because he considers that to be a chatzitza. If the purpose of the binding is to improve the appearance or functionality of the lulav, that's not a chatzitza. Even if you make it out of gold or silver, that wouldn't be a chatzitza, says Rava. V'omar Rabbo, but Rabbo says, Lo linkit inish oshana besudra debina lekicha tama. No, you can't hold your lulav with with a glove or with some kind of cloth that you're holding it by, because we need lekicha tama. You need absolute lekicha, taking it into your hands, and that's not called lekicha. So very important. Rabbo holds that any chatzitzo between the hand and the object, in this case the lulav, damages the aspect of lekicha, and we know that by lulav it says lekachtem. You need to take and that's not called taking. V'Rava Amar, and Rava says lekicha al yedei davar acher shma lekicha. That even though it says lekicha, you have to take it. If your hand is gloved or you have a chatzitza of some sort, it's still called a lekicha, and he brings a proof for it. Says Rashi in Rabbah, lo nevi chatzitza bein yad lo hoshana, there should be nothing interrupting the hand and the lulav, because ein zu lekicha, that would not be lekucha. And then he says on lo linkut inish hoshana besudra, that's still Rabbah talking, kishenot lo latzet bo lo yichroch sudar sheben kteifav al yado, he shouldn't take his talus or his scarf and put it over his hand and hold the lulav with this scarf in between, ve'echos bo al lulav, he shouldn't do that. So Tosfos has this question. We'll go into Tosfos answers it in the way Tosfos answers it. I don't know if we'll have time to go into Tosfos' answer, but before we go into Tosfos' answer, I want to deal with it from Rashi's perspective. So Tosfos has a question. Our Gemara says clearly that a chatzitza between the Kohen's hand and the Kli Sharet is considered a chatzitza and damages the lekicha of lekicha batzmo shel Kohen. It says v'lakacha Kohen. That's not called lekicha. Asks Tosfos, so how does Rava say in the case of a lulav that it is lekicha? There also it says lekachtem, you shall take, and Rava says lekicha al yedei davar acher shma lekicha. It doesn't matter if you've got something in between. You're taking the object, whether you're taking it with your raw hand, your naked hand, or you're taking it through something else. That's still called lekicha. That's what Rava says. Asks Tosfos, how do we reconcile the two? So we'll learn a very fascinating Chasam Sofer, a tshuva in Yerodei Siman Kuf Yud Ches. The Chasam Sofer is answering his Talmud, known as Rav Meir Ash, Rav Meir Rabbi Yehuda Leib, who was the mechaber of a sefer called Imrei Eish. He is one of the Chasam Sofer's greatest Talmidim. The Chasam Sofer said actually once that if he weren't the Rav of Pressburg, he could have been a Rav Meir Ash. He says about his own Talmud, if I weren't distracted by the job of being the Rav of Pressburg, I could have been a Rav Meir Ash. So that he saw in certain ways Rav Meir being greater than himself. And some amazing things are said about Rav Meir Ash. Rav Meir Ash was blind for a year and nobody knew it. He carried on learning and teaching, and everybody thought he was reading from the Sefer. He couldn't see a word. But he knew every Gemara, Rashi, and Tosfos by heart, and he was able to carry on. It was just a clarity and also an incredible tzaddik. And he asks him an interesting shaila. He says, if a goy touches wine with a glove, does that make it yayin nesech? If a goy is pressing wine with a stick to make wine, and he's got a glove, he's holding the stick with a glove, is that going to make it yayin nesech? And the Chasam Sofer says, I believe that lekicha yedei davar shma lekicha, avalo shma negia. Yes, Rava says taking something with a glove is still called lekicha, but it isn't called negia. There's a difference between lekicha and negia. Lekicha means taking, and negia means touching. And he's mechadish that these are two different dinim. In the case of yayin nesech of stam yainam of a goy touching the wine, that's about touching. So he paskins if he's wearing a glove, it's not a touching. He does it not menasek the wine. In the case of making the wine, it's the energy, it's the effort of pressing the grapes. Who cares if you're pressing through a glove or you're not? It's your energy. So the Chasam Sofer is mechadish the difference between lekicha, which is energy, it's acting on an object, and negia, which is contact. And for contact, a chatzitza damages contact, but it doesn't damage energy. You can have energy through the object. It doesn't make any difference. As long as you're using your energy to move something, who cares that there's an object being chotzets? But when it comes to negia, if there's a chatzitza, it damages negia. ובלולב, he goes on to say, I have ktiv ulekachtem atem have a mashma ba'atzmechem. Just as in the case of the Kli Sharet, it says, and Rashi brings it, right? What does it say? It says v'lakach hakohen instead of just v'lakach. It doesn't say and he shall take. It says and he, the kohen, shall take. From that extra word, the kohen says Rashi shitei likicha ba'atzmo shel kohen. We learn that it's not just likicha. Likicha is not sufficient. In the case of Kli Sharet, you need negiah. You have to be in contact with the Kohen. Therefore, by lulav, if it would have said v'lakach atem have a mashma ba'atzmechem, then it would have said it's got to be you. Negiah al yedei hefzek davar acher lo shmei negiah. Then it wouldn't have helped if there was a chatzitza between your hand and the lulav. Aval lekicha al yedei kachol mikri lekicha. But it doesn't say negiah. It doesn't say that you have to touch it with your body. The lulav is not about touch. The lulav, isn't it interesting? In a few minutes, we're going to be mekayim the mitzvah of lulav, and we're learning these dinim. The mitzvah of lulav is not about contact. The mitzvah of lulav is about movement. And the movement you can do with or without something in between. It doesn't matter. And that's why Rava says you can even have a golden basket for your lulav. It doesn't have to be made from lulav leaves. You can have a golden basket at all. If it's lanauto, if you're improving the appearance of the lulav, then it's part of the lulav. It doesn't make any difference what it is. And even if you've got a glove on, according to the way the Chasam Sofer understands Rashi, even if you've got a glove on, you're using your koach to move the lulav. It doesn't matter whether you're in contact with it or not. Tosfos answers differently. Tosfos makes a difference between if your hand is gloved or the lulav is gloved. If your hand is gloved, it's a chatzitza. If the lulav is gloved, it's not a chatzitza. That's how Tosfos resolves it, which means that Tosfos doesn't buy into the chiluk of the Chasam Sofer, which we're using to understand Rashi, that there's a difference between contact and action. When you need to act on something, the energy is from the gavra to the chefza. I act on it. If I act on it, I don't need contact, I just need energy. But when contact is required, it's bilateral. We're talking about the klei sharet. The klei sharet are mekadesh, as we learn ourselves in the Rashi brings, the Gemara brings early, klei sharet mekadshim ki dichtiv v'yimshachem v'yekadesh otam. That Moshe Rabbeinu was mekadesh, he sanctified the kelim. And the kelim include the Kohen's begadim, the Kohen's clothes, Tosfos says. So the energy is not from the gavra, from the subject to the object. The energy is equally from the object to the subject. The kelim, the utensils, give kedusha to the content of the utensils. The utensils and the clothes of the Kohen Gadol give kedusha of the Kohen, give kedusha to the Kohen. So in the case of lekicha, the energy is from the person to the object. In the case of the kli sharet, the energy is just as much from the object to the subject, from the object to the person. For energy to be bilateral, there's got to be physical contact. You've got to be touching. It doesn't help just to be acting on it through some kind of a chatzitza. There's got to be physical contact, and the contact enables bilateral energy flow. Not only from the person to the object, but also from the object of kedusha, the object of sanctity, back to the person himself. And this is something, by the way, which we can learn, go far beyond the dinim that we're learning here. It's the same, in a way, it's the difference between leadership and management. When you manage people, you're managing their position and their activities. It's logistical. That's what a manager does. That's lekicho. You're acting on people. What a leader does is touches people. And you touch a person in a way that the person acts from within themselves. That's the difference. You inspire somebody. But for that, you've got to touch somebody. And when you touch somebody, and we're talking about it metaphorically in the case of leadership, although not always. Sometimes you do put your hand on a person's shoulder if it's appropriate. You to put your hand around them. You give him a hug if he's done something amazing. If it's appropriate. You have physical intimacy when you're inspiring somebody, whether that inspiration is physical or it's emotional. But there is intimacy, there is connection. And we need to know when you connect with somebody, it's not just you impacting them. When you're a manager, it's just you telling them what to do. When you're a leader, it works both ways. And one can be inspired by the people one's leading as well. And the people one's leading are and should be better than you. If you're conducting an orchestra, each player in the orchestra should be able to play his or her instrument better than you can. You're a conductor, you're not a player. When you're leading a team of people, each member of the team should be able to do their job better than you can. You're not them. They should be able to do. That's why you've hired them. They should be better than you. And you should be able to learn from them. It's bilateral. And that's why you need to connect with them, not just tell them what to do. Who are you to tell them what to do? You don't know their work. You can just coordinate them. But the important thing is to be able to touch them, to be able to inspire them. And it's the same with a Rebbe and Talmidim. With a Rebbe's job with a Talmud is not to give him information, it's not to transact, it's to touch something inside the Talmud that enables the Talmud to grow and to develop from within themselves. And therefore, so often, it's again bilateral. If a Rebbe is touching a Talmud, the influence is bilateral. Not only is the Rebbe inspiring the Talmud, but the Talmud is also inspiring the Rebbe. I can speak from experience in this very Beis HaMedrash, how much all of you are able to inspire me, and how much I know that in so many different areas, you're greater than me, and I learn from you, hopefully as much as you learn from me. And that's why the Chasam Sofer could say about his greatest and one of his very early Talmidim, Reb Meir Ash, he could say about him, if I weren't the Rav of Pressburg, I could have been a Meir Amash, I could have been like my Talmud. Is recognizing that when Talmud and Rebbe are touching one another, the flow of energy and inspiration is not one way, it's bilateral.